The letter arrived at the Vatican sometime before the Feast of the Ascension. It was not delivered in secret. It was signed, dated, and addressed in plain language to His Holiness Pope Leo XIV. The man who wrote it was Father Davide Pagliarani, the Superior General of the Society of St. Pius X, leading the largest traditionalist Catholic organization in the world. And when it came time for the Vatican to respond, the response that came back was silence. Take a moment to subscribe to this channel if you have not already, and leave a comment below telling us where in the world you are watching from. The story you are about to hear is one that thousands of Catholics are trying to understand right now, and it matters deeply to the faith. The letter in question, the one that received no meaningful reply, was not the first Father Pagliarani had written. By his own account, he had written to Pope Leo XIV twice before releasing his May 14 declaration publicly. The first letter requested a private audience. The second letter explained, clearly and respectfully, the real-life situation of the society and what it needed from Rome. Neither letter produced the response the society was waiting for. When Father Pagliarani eventually addressed Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernandez, the head of the Vatican's dicastery for the doctrine of the faith, he wrote, "I will not repeat here all that we have already expressed in the letter addressed to Pope Leo XIV, of which you have direct knowledge." He had said what needed to be said to the Pope himself. The Pope had not answered. To understand why that silence carries such weight, you have to go back more than half a century. You have to go back to a Swiss valley and a French archbishop who believed that the Catholic Church was losing something it could never afford to lose. Marcel Lefebvre was born in Tourcoing, France in 1905. He was ordained a priest, became a bishop, served as an apostolic delegate in Africa, and rose to become the Superior General of the Holy Ghost Fathers, one of the oldest missionary orders in the Church. By every measure of the institution, he was a man of the Church. He had spent decades building it, preaching it, defending it in African villages and French seminaries and Roman corridors. But the Second Vatican Council, which closed in 1965, began to trouble him in ways he could not set aside. The liturgical reforms that followed, the new Mass, the revised rites, the changed posture of the Church toward the world, struck Lefebvre not as a development of tradition, but as something more violent than that. He believed something essential was being dismantled, and he could not stay quiet. In 1969, he opened a seminary in Fribourg, Switzerland, to train priests the way he believed they should be trained, in the traditions the Church had handed down for centuries before the Council. In 1970, he formally established the Society of St. Pius X, named for the Pope who had himself confronted the errors of modernism at the beginning of the 20th century. The society received the approval of the local bishop at its founding. It was canonically legitimate. It was a part of the Church. That would not last long. By 1975, the Vatican withdrew approval of the society. Pope Paul VI suspended Lefebvre in 1976, forbidding him to carry out priestly and episcopal functions. Lefebvre did not comply. He continued ordaining priests, celebrating the Old Mass, and building out a network of chapels and seminaries across the world. The tension between Menzingen, the Swiss town where the society established its headquarters, and Rome became a defining fault line in the history of post-conciliar Catholicism. For most of the 1970s and 1980s, negotiations came and went. Rome tried to bring the society back into full canonical standing, and Lefebvre kept asking for the same things: recognition of the traditional Mass, a critical examination of the Council's documents, a path to regularization that did not require him to accept what he believed were errors. The negotiations always stalled at the same point. Rome was willing to offer accommodation. Lefebvre was asking for something closer to vindication. The breaking point came on June 30, 1988. On that day, at the Society's seminary in Icône, Archbishop Lefebvre consecrated 4 bishops without the mandate of Pope John Paul II. The 4 men were Bernard Fallet, Bernard Tissier de Mallarès, Richard Williamson, and Alfonso de Galarreta. Lefebvre knew exactly what he was doing and said so publicly. He believed the crisis in the Church was so severe that the society needed bishops to ensure its survival, even if Rome had not authorized them. John Paul II excommunicated Lefebvre and the 4 new bishops immediately. The Society of St. Pius X entered a canonical situation it has never fully left: irregular, unrecognized, and in an ambiguous relationship with Rome. that canonists and theologians have been debating ever since. Lefebvre died in 1991, but the society he founded did not collapse. It grew. It built seminaries, schools, retreat houses, and parishes across every continent. By the time Pope Benedict XVI lifted the excommunications of the 4 surviving bishops in 2009, the society had become a global institution with hundreds of priests and tens of thousands of faithful who had built their entire Catholic lives around its chapels. Benedict's gesture was significant. It removed the formal sanction, but it did not resolve the underlying canonical situation. The society's priests were still considered to be operating without legitimate pastoral authority in the eyes of Rome. The wound was cleaned, but it was not closed. What Benedict's action did accomplish was to signal that the door was not permanently shut. His 2007 document, Summorum Pontificum, which liberalized access to the traditional Latin Mass for ordinary Catholics, was also widely understood as an olive branch to the traditionalist world broadly and to the society in particular. The message from Rome, at least under Benedict, was that the old liturgy was not an error to be corrected but a treasure to be preserved, and that those attached to it deserved respect, not marginalization. For the society's faithful, this was more significant than many in the wider church understood. They had been told for decades in various ways that their attachment to the old rites was an obstacle to unity. Benedict was saying something different. Bernard Fellay served as the Society's Superior General for 2 decades, the longest tenure in the Society's history, after Lefebvre himself. It was under Fellay that the most serious attempt at full regularization took place, in the years following Benedict's lifting of the excommunications. The negotiations went further than any previous round. A doctrinal preamble was drafted, positions were exchanged, and there was a real possibility for a brief moment that the society might come back into full canonical standing. Those talks ultimately collapsed, partly over the wording of the preamble, and partly over internal divisions within the society about how much concession was acceptable. Pope Francis took a different approach. He did not resume the doctrinal negotiations. Instead, he extended practical pastoral recognition. In September 2015, during the Year of Mercy, he granted SSPX priests the faculty to validly and licitly hear confessions. In November 2016, he made that faculty permanent. In April 2017, local bishops were authorized to grant SSPX priests the faculty to assist at marriages validly. These were not steps toward full regularization in the canonical sense. They were gestures of pastoral mercy toward the faithful who attended society chapels. But they signaled something. Francis was willing to recognize the sacramental reality of the society's ministry, even while the canonical question remained unresolved. Fellay stepped down in 2018 after 2 terms. Davide Pagliarani, a younger priest from Italy who had served as rector of the Society's seminary in Argentina, was elected Superior General. He was 47 years old at the time. His tone was different from Fellay's in certain ways, quieter, more measured in public, but no less firm on the Society's doctrinal positions. Under Pagliarani, the Society continued to insist that the path to regularization required Rome to address the theological questions it had been raising since 1970, not merely to extend pastoral accommodations. The Society was not looking for a comfortable arrangement. It was looking for an acknowledgement that the questions it had raised were legitimate. Pope Francis died on April 21, 2025. The conclave that followed elected Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost on May 8, 2025. He took the name Leo XIV, the first American-born pope in the history of the Church. The choice of the name Leo carried its own weight. The last Pope Leo X, had governed the Church from 1878 to 1903, navigating the Church's relationship with the modern world with a combination of intellectual rigor and pastoral care that many traditionalists still look back on with admiration. His encyclicals on the nature of Christian civilization, on the rights of workers, on the relationship between faith and reason, represent a vision of the Church that the Society of St. Pius X has always considered part of the tradition it is defending. Whether the new pope intended any of this by choosing the name Leo, or whether it was purely personal devotion, is not something anyone outside the conclave can say. What Pagliarani thought when he heard the name, we do not know. What we know is what happened next. Shortly after the election of Leo XIV, Father Pagliarani wrote to the new pope. The first letter, by his own account, requested a private audience, a direct meeting between the Superior General of the Society and the new pontiff, so that the Society's situation could be explained face to face without intermediaries. No audience was granted. Pagliarani wrote a second time, explaining the Society's real-life situation more fully, making clear what the Society needed and why. That letter, too, received no satisfactory response. The Pope's silence, or the silence that filtered back through the channels of the Curia, was not a soft no. It was the kind of silence that communicates a position without stating one. In February 2026, the Society moved from correspondence to announcement. On February 2nd, Father Pagliarani publicly declared that the Society intended to consecrate 4 new bishops on July 1, 2026, with or without a pontifical mandate from the Vatican. The date was not chosen at random. July 1, 1988 was the day Archbishop Lefebvre had consecrated those first 4 bishops 38 years before. The Society was choosing the same date, and the symbolism was unmistakable. Whether Rome understood it as a provocation or as a statement of continuity, only Rome could say. The Vatican responded through Cardinal Fernandez. On February 12, 2026, the Cardinal met with Pagliarani at the Vatican. He proposed dialogue, but on a condition. The Society would need to suspend its plans for the July consecrations in order for talks to begin. It was the kind of condition that had been on the table in various forms for decades. Come back inside first, then we will talk. For the Society, that condition had always been the sticking point. Regularization was not something they believed they needed to earn by ceasing to be what they were. They were asking Rome to engage with the theological substance of their position, not to demand compliance as the price of conversation. On Ash Wednesday, February 18, Pagliarani sent his reply to Cardinal Fernandez. He declined the terms. He could not accept the conditions under which the Vatican proposed to resume dialogue. The collision course that had been building for more than a year was now fully set. On May 13, 2026, Cardinal Fernandez issued a formal statement from the Vatican press office. The planned consecration of new bishops by the Society of St. Pius X, it said, would constitute a schismatic act. Those who participated, the consecrating bishops and the priests receiving episcopal ordination, would incur lati sententia excommunication, the immediate and automatic excommunication that attaches to the act itself, without any further declaration required. It was the same canonical mechanism that had been used in 1988. The Vatican was drawing the line clearly. The following day, May 14, on the Feast of the Ascension of our Lord, Father Davide Pagliarani signed and released the document that had been anticipated but still carried weight when it appeared. The Declaration of Catholic Faith, addressed to His Holiness Pope Leo XIV, issued from the Society's headquarters in Menzingen, Switzerland, was not a letter of grievance. It was something more precise than that. It was a statement of what the Society believed, set before the Pope as in Pagliarani's own words. What seems to us to correspond to the minimum indispensable to be in communion with the Church, and to truly call ourselves Catholics. The Declaration affirmed the Church's uniqueness in the words the Society had always used. There is only one faith and one Church by which we may be saved. It affirmed the missionary mandate given to the apostles as binding until the end of time. It insisted on the full and unaltered authority of the Pope to guard and expound the deposit of faith, but not to create new doctrine. It spoke of the Virgin Mary's role in salvation in terms that the Vatican had recently indicated it considered problematic. It made oblique but pointed references to the contested interpretations of Second Vatican Council documents. The question of religious liberty, the nature of the Church's relationship to other religions, the varying levels of doctrinal authority that attach to conciliar texts. And it spoke of 50 years of concerns set before the Holy See, concerns about errors destroying faith and morals, to which no truly satisfactory response had ever come. As of this recording, no public response has come from Pope Leo XIV. The Society announced on May 26, 2026, the names of the 4 bishops it intends to consecrate on July 1. Pascal Schreiber of Switzerland, Rector of the Herz Jesus Seminary; Michael Goldade of the United States, Rector of St. Thomas Aquinas Seminary; Michel Poincenet de Sivry of France, Superior of the Benelux District; and Marc Hanapie of France, a professor at St. Thomas Aquinas Seminary. These are not cardinals or princes of the Church. They are priests who have spent their lives in the societies, seminaries, and districts, teaching young men the old theology, the old mass, the old discipline. On July 1, if nothing changes, they will receive episcopal ordination from bishops whom Rome does not recognize, and Rome will immediately declare that they and the bishops who consecrate them are excommunicated. What happens after that, no one can say with certainty. The society has survived excommunication before. It survived 1988. It survived the death of its founder. It survived decades of canonical ambiguity and pastoral isolation. The faithful who fill its chapels on Sunday mornings have not gone anywhere. They are not a curiosity at the margins of Catholic life. They number in the hundreds of thousands across Europe, the Americas, and beyond. They have built communities, raised children in the faith, found their spiritual home in the old rites. And the clear doctrinal language that the society has always offered. They are not, by and large, people who are looking for a fight with Rome. They are people who believe that the church had something precious that was being lost, and they found a place where it was still kept. The silence from Leo XIV, whatever it means, is not entirely unusual in the history of this relationship. Popes have generally chosen not to engage the society directly, preferring to let the Curia handle the technical and theological back and forth. Rome has always moved slowly with the society, and the society has always read Rome's silences through the lens of decades of frustration. Whether this pope will find a way to speak before the calendar forces the issue, or whether the July 1 consecrations will proceed, and a new round of excommunications will define the next chapter of this long and painful story, remains to be seen. What is already visible and already a matter of historical record is this. A letter was written, addressed to the Pope by name, signed by the man responsible for one of the largest traditional Catholic communities in the world, laying out what he believed the Church must affirm to be truly Catholic. It asked, in essence, whether Rome and the Society of St. Pius X still shared enough ground to call themselves part of the same church. And the silence that came back, at least so far, has not answered that question. It has only deepened it. There are Catholics watching this situation who are not members of the society and never have been. There are bishops and priests and theologians within the ordinary structures of the church who are troubled by what they see unfolding. There are men and women who love the Latin Mass, who have never set foot in a society chapel, but who feel the weight of what July 1 might mean. And there are the faithful inside those chapels who have been hearing, for as long as they can remember, that reconciliation was always just around the corner. One more dialogue, one more negotiation, one more patient letter to Rome. The letter has been sent. The feast of the Ascension came and went. A new pope sits in the chair of Peter, and he has not yet spoken to the man who asked for an audience. The 4 bishops are known by name. The date is on the calendar, and somewhere in the machinery of the church that was built to outlast every crisis, the silence continues. If this story matters to you, share it with someone in your life who loves the church and wants to understand what is happening inside it. Leave a comment below. We read everyone, and we will be here as July 1 approaches, covering what happens next.